let me put in a couple plugs while we're here. This Friday night, we have our Spring Palooza. It is our last social event of the year for the boys. It's very similar to the Fall Fest we had in the fall, except for this one we invite girls from the girls' schools, or guys can bring female guests with them, 7th or 8th graders. You know, there's it's bubble soccer and bungee run, and there's another basketball shooting thing, and board games and ping pong, and pizza and ice cream sundaes, and the whole thing. It's a nice night. So if your son isn't sure, encourage him to come along if he doesn't have anything else going on Friday night. And so that's one thing. Another thing I would just want to put on your radar, we've started Arupe volleyball last week. So high school has a volleyball team. They've had a team for 5 or 6 years. Last year, our 8th grade guidance counselor was the high school volleyball coach. And so after April vacation, he said, hey, why don't we start running some clinics? He worked with some of his varsity players to run some clinics for the 7th and 8th graders, get them interested. Mostly a bunch of 8th graders last year who did it. They had a great time doing it. He left, and then they switched to volleyball coaches, so they're took a little while to get it together. But again, it's a bunch of great upperclassmen that really want to work with the 7th and 8th graders, teach them the skills of volleyball. We had 6 guys go last week. Yesterday we were up to, I think, 9. They're gonna do 2 or 3 days a week from 2:45 to 3:30, learn the fundamentals of the game. Hopefully we get enough, we can do some inter-squad scrimmages. It's a great experience, a great group of kids who were in there yesterday afternoon. And it's a sport where I don't think any of the guys who play varsity right now ever played before 9th grade. So it's also a nice sport where guys can pick it up, and if they haven't, because I know some guys get cut from various teams around here. Volleyball seems to be, it's a new one, it's new to everybody who does it. So if your son's not doing something in the spring, it's pretty low commitment, it's not even really commitment, it's a couple days a week. Encourage him to do that. A few other things going on around here. Last week, of course, we had all the festivities around the official inauguration of President Reagan in her role, and the mission mass. We also had some stuff going on in Arupe. The 7th graders are really starting to ramp up their city projects, start to plan them and build them. Some of the guys have been using the 3D printer. Some of the guys are using our newest technological toy, which is a Glowforge. It's a laser cutter. It's probably more exciting than practical, but they've been using that to cut out and put together some pieces for their thing. We also had a very interesting thing last week. Some of our 8th graders and Mr. DeVito's team, all the 8th graders do engineering projects in the second half of 8th grade in science. Mr. DeVito was able to put his students in touch with a number of people with disabilities. And they contacted them and they emailed, in some cases they had phone calls with them to find out what sort of daily challenges they have because of their disabilities. And then they had to design something to help them out. And those guys were presenting their projects last week. And they made some very cool stuff. None of these things will ever be marketed, I'm sure, and produced, but it was really neat, and just the sort of communication they had with people, getting an understanding and building an empathy, and then that whole design process that we work on in the second half of 8th grade, that creative thinking, redesign and stuff like that, they were able to do with more of a specific purpose in mind. So a lot of stuff going on around here. Today we want to talk a little bit about just the transition to 8th grade. What's 8th grade going to look like compared to 7th grade? And you've probably heard me say before that 7th grade we really focus on sort of getting the students here, getting them comfortable, getting them settled in and connected. 8th grade we try to make them uncomfortable. Comfortable 8th graders are not fun to be around. So we try to do that because they're already comfortable by the time they come into 8th grade. So, but I'd like to talk a little about what's going to be similar and different academically next year. And Mrs. Hornby's going to talk about some of the social changes that you'll see, it's really that we see here. So a couple of quick things. In 8th grade, it's about challenging them, it's about pushing them. Academically, it's pushing them with more complex concepts that they're going to be learning, further honing of skills, and sometimes introducing some new skills to them. And you know, some of it's not like we flip a switch. I mean, some of that they're seeing this year in places, you know, some subjects it's more of a gradual progression, and some subjects you get leaps and plateaus. But you will see as they go along. Overall, 8th grade is going to be academically more rigorous. They're going to have, and part of that will be, the students will, as we look at skills, they're going to have more analysis, more critical thinking that they're going to be doing. And they're doing that, certainly some of that this year. It's going to ramp up next year. It's just the complexity of what they're working with. Some of it starts very, very simply. In religion, as they're studying church history, you go from more very good and evil, black and white, the Christians versus the Lions of sort of the early church history, to more ambiguous questions that they have to wrestle with as they look at the Protestant Reformation, as they look at the church during the French Revolution, as they look at the modern church. So you're going to see they're going to be just wrestling again with more complex questions, more ambiguous questions, more open-ended journal questions in their religion classes. The sort of depth is also going to see in social studies and English. They're going to have just deeper connections between those two subjects next year. Our theme for 8th grade in their teen classes is a big idea of what constitutes a just society. So in social studies they study civics, they read things that are called Angry Men, then they look at instances of injustice, whether they're looking at the Holocaust, whether they're looking at slavery and the experience of African Americans in this country, whether they're looking at injustices against women throughout the year. And they'll do different, some guys will branch off in places where they can explore different topics, and they will do that. And they're going to see the books will fit in with that as well. So you're going to see deeper connections there. In science, in the fall of 8th grade, probably the most difficult thing they do in science is they do a unit on evolution. And in evolution, there's some pretty difficult concepts. You know, animals don't just evolve overnight, and that's pretty hard for them to understand, is that the animal didn't say one day, hey, I need a tail, I'm going to grow it, or something like that. But they'll work on that, natural selection, evolution. So that'll be you'll see they will struggle with that in the fall in science class. Second half of engineering is a little bit more, it's a little different approach and different way that they're learning. Civics, you're going to see, again, in social studies, more independent research, more writing, more critical reading as they go along. You're going to see in most classes, there's going to be more emphasis on supporting your points with evidence. And they started that, certainly they're doing that in 7th grade, it's going to give more so in 8th grade, you know, in social studies, in English, and religion, in their lab reports, in science. So it's not just a topic sentence and supporting points. There's going to be more emphasis on explaining the evidence. And guys are one of the things they struggle with is they have a piece of evidence. They know it's related to what they're trying to say. They will struggle in how to actually integrate that in a way that explains how that piece of evidence supports their point. That's a very difficult thing for them to do, and they do it. Some guys do it pretty well now at one level. They're going to be pushed to do it at a whole different level, as they also are learning to integrate quotes, because that's a piece of evidence, particularly when you're looking in English and you're analyzing a novel. How do you integrate those quotes in? And that's a tough skill. It's you know, they look at it sometimes and you say, yeah, that's in there, and you read it and you say, it has nothing to do with the paragraph. It's a quote, you're right, and there's one word in there that seems to be related to everything else you're talking about, but the rest of the quote makes no sense. So that's one of the things that they're going to work on. They're going to struggle with at times, but you know, that's what we're going to be working on. Another thing you're going to find at times is the pace of classes will pick up. So that will challenge some of them, you know, so that they're going to need to do more reading in a night because they're moving faster. Because most of them can. Now, again, for some of them the pace will be fine. For some of them it'll be more challenging. For some they'll change from class to class or different times of the year. Reading level, the books that they're reading, all the 8th graders are ready to kill a mockingbird. Most 8th graders will read 12 Angry Men, a book called Boxers and Saints. And those books were just, the reading level is going to step up from 8th grade. Step up in then 9th grade, and this is a good progression that we have going along. In English, they're going to do some more complex writing, things like personal narratives. Some of them will, probably most of them will write a 5-paragraph essay. Sometimes it might be an intro in 3 paragraphs, sometimes it might be 5 paragraphs. So it depends on, it switch a little bit, balance things out during the year. Somewhere into a more of an essay style. Lab reports will be more extensive, particularly some of the labs they do on related to the evolution unit that they're doing. When they're also going to do more, in 7th grade in English, a lot of the analysis they're doing is plot summary and learning the basic plot diagram of a novel. As they hit some of the novels in 8th grade, many of them will read Night, again, To Kill a Mockingbird. There's a lot more that they will do literary analysis along the lines of symbolism, foreshadowing, looking at similes and metaphors, doing some close reading and pulling out from a paragraph. How is the author constructed this paragraph here? So, yeah, just stepping it up a little bit more. Math. If your son's in the regular pre-algebra right now, it'll probably be a pretty steady transition into the second half of that because that's a 2-year course. And he probably won't notice, he won't feel a whole lot of difference. It's going to be pretty steady for him. Some chapters are obviously more difficult for some kids than for other kids, depending on what, where their strengths are in math. If your son's in a regular pre-algebra and he's doing really well and he decides to jump up to Algebra 1, and there's a process for him to do that the math teachers will probably be letting you know fairly soon. There's an application process and there's some work he needs to do over the summer to do that. Or even if he's in the accelerated this year and going to go to Algebra 1, he's going to notice quite a bit of difference between where he is now and the Algebra 1 next year. And the first thing, and I'll send a letter on this in September, the first thing he's going to notice in September is the pace. It's a 9th grade course, and it moves at a 9th grade pace. I don't think there's a big difference between 9th grade pace and 8th grade pace, but there is. He is going to, for the most of the boys in September, if you're in Algebra 1, will say, the math isn't that hard, but I just wish they'd slow down. We seem to do something new every day. And it is, it's the pace. And by about mid-October, they have adjusted to that pace. And then the math gets hard. Because the first 6 weeks is stuff they've seen before, to some extent. Maybe some new things, new twists. Most of it's stuff they've seen before. Again, just as they get ready for the pace, then they throw in the more complex math as they get into Algebra 1. And if your son's in Algebra 1 next year, the one place you want to know is January is the worst. For whatever reason, the way that the book is set up, January seems to be the most complicated stuff that they do for where they are. And really, the complication there is not the math. The math isn't that hard. It's more abstract. And for many of them, their brains aren't ready for that piece of abstractness yet. A lot of them will bang their heads against the wall in January. When they get to May, they look back and review and they say, why was this hard? Because their brains keep growing, and that changes. You don't see the same thing when a student takes the math in 9th grade, or takes Algebra 1 in 9th grade. Most 9th graders have already hit that developmental piece in their brain. That's just something to keep an eye on. January seems to be, they get to I was asking guys the other day, how's that one? But January is a tough one for that. If they're in Algebra 1 now, geometry, they'll be taking geometry honors next year. That's, for some of them, they're going to love it, and for some of them, it's a very different geometry is very different from algebra, algebra 2, etc. Geometry, where they go with proofs, is a lot more logic-based stuff, so that'll be a new challenge for them. In languages, if your son takes Latin, a lot of September is still reviewing some of the basic stuff they got this year, putting that down again. They'll hit a lot of more complicated stuff in October. October's where they'll start to see a little bit more faster pace and just more complex translations that they're doing. In the spoken languages, what they're going to see is a transition into more and more use of the target language in class, going from sort of 50-50, probably English to target language now, to more of a 90-10 ratio, target language to English next year. And as they start to get into, most of the time they're doing present tense at this point in time. They start to hit 8th grade, they start picking up some new tenses, and that's just more things to try to remember. That's French and Spanish. I can't speak to Chinese as well. That's the one class I really have no idea what's going on when I go into a Chinese class. I never took Latin, but I can figure it out. I had a little bit of French and enough Spanish to I know what's going on there. Chinese, they're going to increase the number of characters, and they are. I just know by watching the classes. I think I'm watching it and having no idea what's going on. When I watch 8th grade Chinese, they're speaking all the time in Chinese, and they're very good at it. She's speaking all the time in Chinese, and I'm always stunned by how much Chinese they learn in such a short period of time. And again, maybe I'm more stunned by Chinese because I know any of the words that they're saying, whereas the other classes I can usually make out some of the words. But again, you'll see that change. They'll also do in French and Spanish. They'll probably do some. Oftentimes they do either some short story or some very some simple short novel that they'll read in those classes. It's just a step up. It's usually something that's written all in tense, present tense, using pretty basic vocabulary. But again, the idea that they're reading and trying to figure out a story, and trying to learn some vocabulary. In that case, they learn some vocabulary in the context.
Sorry, I'm having trouble with the connection. Please.
So, before I turn over to Mrs. Hornby, any questions about the academics for next year? Yes.
Do they move in their group that's the English, Social Studies, Science, or do they start fresh again with a new set?
They will probably, some of them may have the same, but they don't all move with the same set. So there's a couple of reasons. One is one of our English teachers going maternity leave, so we'll be switching up, and we may be switching up the teams. One of our science teachers leaving, we're hiring a new science teacher, so that will change some things right there. With 2 new people coming, we're not sure how much we'll rearrange the teams. Some of the teams teach predominantly 7th grade, others teach predominantly 8th grade, so that changes it. And also there are students who should not be together for another year. It's not good for us, or it's not good for them. One of the two. So we try to be personal. And there are some students that we know better after a year, and we think his style may not fit so well with this teacher, or he really needs to be with this teacher again, or he really needs to be with this other teacher or something like that. So we try to make some good decisions along those ways as well. Other questions? Yes.
This summer, will there be a math pack outside?
They won't have a math pack this summer. They will have a summer reading assignment similar to last year. A couple books and then an all-school read, which we should probably have by early June before they leave. We'll try to get that out to them. The only ones, again, if your son's in regular pre-algebra and he wants to jump up to Algebra 1, the process, again, there's an application process, and then there's two vehicles to do it. There's some content that the accelerated students have learned that the regular ones guys wouldn't have learned this year that's essential to Algebra 1. Like, they're not even learning that you go and just be lost in September. So 2 options to do that. One is to take the course here. It's 3 weeks, 2 hours a day with Mr. Lynch, one of our 8th grade math teachers. Great way to get it done. There's 2 different sessions on that. Easiest way to do it is that always convenient. So the other way is they can, we give them an old math book, and we say, hey, these 3 chapters here, work with a tutor, work with somebody, work on your own. The ones who take the class, 100% get into the Algebra 1, because then they take a test. The ones who do it on their own, it's a little more mixed. You know, probably more 50 or 60%. You know, some of the guys, yeah, I really didn't study that. I really didn't learn everything. You know, we've gotten better at giving more clear instructions, because in the math book, you know, there are A problems, B problems, and C problems. We say, make sure you do the B and C problems, those are the harder ones. A lot of the guys would do the first 3 problems, the easiest ones, they, I got this, you know, and they move on to the next section. And then when you get to it, they really don't have it. So those are the guys doing some math.
So what's the kind of like thought process that there are no math tracks? I mean, like a lot of schools, you know, some sort of math. I mean, you know, obviously you can do that on your own, but depending on how you get to track, just because they say you lose X% over the summer, it's kind of a little bit of a restart in September.
Yeah, we've been hesitant just to give extra work over the summer. We work pretty hard in the year, and we do a lot of, you know, they learn many other things over the summer, hopefully. So we have not done that. And haven't had a big discussion on it, so I don't have a lot to say about the thought process. Other questions? Yes.
The increase in meetings on the 8th grade, will most of it still be iPads, or will it be a mix of traditional books and iPad? And then also just basic learning notations.
Yes. So on the reading, for most of the novels, it's up to them whether they want to have it on the iPad or, you know, just buy a paperback copy of the novel. The price difference is about the same price to buy it on the iPad or buy the novel. So To Kill a Mockingbird, I think some of the guys like to read them on their iPads, and other guys really like to have that paper copy in their hand. And we'll teach them annotation skills, whichever format they're doing. It's a little different. It's pretty similar to doing it on the iPad, so that'll be up to them. Most of the, again, religion and social studies, the reading they're going to do in science, most of it will be available on the iPad, either through, you know, articles that they're reading or religion is written in text. So that'll be very similar. There's no social studies textbook that's separate from the iPad. And then, sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Note-taking.
Note-taking. So note-taking skills, religion continues to teach note-taking skills. That's one of the things they do. They really focus on it in religion class. In social studies, they'll also do quite a bit of note-taking. And again, it's that move from sort of just write down what we write on the board to, hey, the board is the outline, and you need to sort of and slowly transitioning them to, you know, learning to take down more of the things that go around what's on the board. I did have a son who's a sophomore, and when he was probably 3-4 weeks into freshman year, I said, hey, how are things going in freshman year? I said, good. And I said, any differences? What are the main differences you see between Lupe and high school? And he said, we take a lot more notes. And I thought, do you know how to take notes? And he said, oh yeah, I know how to take notes. I said, where did you learn to take notes? He said, religion class. He said, I use the exact format they taught me in religion class, and it works beautifully. So I don't think they take, again, they don't do a whole lot of note taking, and as they're doing more sort of research and project-based stuff in science and social studies. But, and they're going to see more, there's more note taking in high school, again, more delivery of information in the high school classes. High school classes tend to be more content-driven than skill-driven. There's a difference between middle and high school. But our guys are well prepared to do that when they do.
Just looking ahead in terms of the language requirement for graduation, is it 3 years of the same language? If you wanted to change, for instance, is the best time to do that in 8th grade?
No.
Is there any new language offered in the high school?
Yeah, so the question, what's the language requirement in the high school? So the language requirement in the high school is 3 years of the same language in the high school. So it doesn't matter, basically, because colleges want to see 3 years and colleges only see the high school transcript. So they wouldn't see what was on it. So even if they, you know, they do, even if they pass into level 2 on, if they test into level 2 honors for freshman year, placed in level 2 honors for freshman year, they still would have to take 2, 3, and 4 in the high school. So the time to change is going into 9th grade. They have that option. A lot of, I don't know, maybe, it's not that many, but around 10, a dozen kids at the most probably will change. You know, if they're not enjoying the language they take, or they find it particularly difficult, sometimes it's a good idea, hey, maybe a different language is better. For some kids, a spoken language plays to their strengths because they're very good at speaking. For other guys, Latin plays to their strengths because they don't ever want to speak. And Latin, you just translate, you know, it's more translation. For some guys, Chinese works better. So, you know, it's a good, hey, they do 2 years, if they like their language, they stick with it, they do well in it, that places level 2 honors, which is a nice feather for them as they go forward to be on that honors track in their language. But they can decide to switch languages after freshman.
What are the additional languages in high school?
So in high school, nothing different for freshmen. For the guys who take Latin, many of them, and actually other kids will be invited too, they can start picking up Greek. Ancient Greek is really sophomore year. They have to do some other things with their schedule, like push chemistry off to junior year or take chemistry over the summer. But there are ways to double up in a language starting sophomore year. It gets easier junior year and senior year, but there are ways to. So Ancient Greek is the one, and then there's a Japanese elective for seniors. It's 1 semester. But otherwise, it's the 4 basic languages we have. For a little while, we had a teacher who taught some Arabic. She retired. She was a French teacher who retired. I don't think anyone's teaching Arabic right now. Again, it was a 1 semester elective for seniors. Maybe it was a 4-year elective for seniors. Yes.
Sorry, one last question. With respect to doing research papers, are they taught next year a little bit more about, you know, how to research the paper, framework, and analysis, note cards, outlines?
Not, they're going to do quite a bit of research. They're not going to write a big research paper. So it tends to be a lot of research and divided up into short papers or presentations, taking research from sort of, you know, doing it for a week, you know, on this particular focus on the topic, to have a presentation on the Friday or a presentation after a week and a half, and then going into the next phase of the, you know, focus of the topic. So, but certainly, you know, taking down notes, taking down how to find information, how to, what was I saying the other day, we were having a conversation with this. A lot of what we do now is teach kids how to use information. It's sort of a big term, and that's, you know, finding it, figuring out is it good information, is it not good information, and then how to use that information to back up an argument. You know, I think certainly when I was in school, there was much more of just being given information. You know, at this age, the teacher had all the information, gave the information. Much more now what we're doing in school is teaching students how to use information and all the different component parts in that. So it's an interesting, and I would say even in the last 10 years, there's been significant changes in that process. Yeah, not the note, yeah, I know what you mean about the note, but that tends to be, when I taught in the high school, we did that more sophomore year paper. So we want to say they definitely do it now, sophomores, maybe juniors. So there is that piece where you start to teach that, the big research paper. I think junior year in English. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Hornby. If you have any questions about academics, I'll be here after. I want to give her a chance to talk a little about the fun social transitions we're all going to see.
So, and I just have a few quick points to make, you all to be aware of just what we tend to see here as our students do change from 7th to 8th graders socially. So certainly Mr. Hamlet alluded to the fact that they tend to come in quite comfortable. That's a great thing. You know, they've gotten used to the pace of things here, the expectations, just the rules and policies. And in that sense, they are able to then take a few more risks, possibly socially as well. So we tend to find them coming comfortable, and that lends itself to them possibly even getting together a little bit more frequently outside of school with their friend group. So you might see that to start happening. that said, you know your son best, and if you know that's not his style, and he's the type of guy that maybe prefers to stay in and Fortnite and is not that real social animal, then that's okay too, and there's going to be other guys just like him. So kind of keep that in mind. But again, that comfort, they do come in with it. We tend to see their friend group solidify a little bit once we get through that fall semester, and we really notice that in the cafeteria. Those lunch tables are pretty rigid in 8th grade, whereas the 7th graders were sort of testing the waters. A lot of the lunch tables were determined this year by clubs or athletic teams, depending on the season, whoever they were sort of spending time with. Maybe it was just their homeroom group. That's how they were sort of connecting. But again, in 8th grade, they branched out a little bit, and then they solidified those groups, and those tables are pretty concrete. And Ms. Dowitz will often be in the cafeteria, and she'll point out to me, that 8th grader right there, he has not moved seats in the whole year of 8th grade. He sits in the same exact seat. So we'll see some of that, which is, again, a nice thing. On the other hand, we'll also see that there's going to be a little bit of a new dynamic with the grade, so we'll have some transfer students coming in to join the class, which again is a great opportunity for your guys to branch out a little bit, meet a few more students that they don't know. On the other hand, some of your students might even know some of these guys that are joining the grade. So it's just going to sort of, again, cause a little bit of a new dynamic and an opportunity, I think, for many of them socially. So we'll see a little bit of that. The summer, your students are going to have a little bit of different experiences, I'm sure, and some of these guys between 7th and 8th grade, again, do solidify some friendships with BC High students. Others are really spending their time going back to those camps that they've been involved in for many years, or spending time doing activities with their town friends. So some of your students, it would not be uncommon for them not to really see many BC High boys all summer, and then to come into 8th grade. And that may cause them some nerves in that first month or two. But that's, again, they're not alone. So I think everyone has a little bit of a different experience in that sense. We do tend to see as they become 8th graders, again, that comfort allows them to take those risks. So we see that academically as well, which again can be a great thing. We're going to push them to advocate more for themselves quite a bit. And they're ready to do that. They really are. If they're not doing that, I think the advisor and myself can sort of assist with all of it. So again, you know your sons best if you're concerned about their ability to talk to teachers. If you don't think they're as comfortable as maybe they should be in this first semester next year, reach out to us so we can maybe set some goals with them to do that. The other thing we'll start to do or see is just the fact that they have a little bit more privileges here in the building. They have a little bit more responsibility, so the expectations that we hold them to a little bit higher as far as behavior, following procedures, and all of that. They should know by 8th grade. So that's, again, another thing that they're going to really, I think, thrive from, is just having a little bit more freedom in the building, and they're ready to do that as well. We talked a little bit about, just what we see, the difference between 7th and 8th graders. We see them kind of walking around in packs by 8th grade. So again, just alluding to the fact that those friend groups begin to solidify a little bit in the fall. I know I'm rambling a little bit, so I'm not sure if I made all my points, but do you have any questions about any things that you might anticipate for next year socially, or concerns you may have? And then the last thing I would say to that is just, please do reach out to the advisor or myself in September if socially you still feel like there's just something missing with your son. Again, 7th grade, we just focused on getting them used to the building, used to the expectations, encouraging them to try new things, but we know that they all haven't done all of that. For some of them, it's just exhausting to get through the day here. We've talked about that, and that's all they can do. And so 8th grade is the time that they can then kind of amp up the social stuff a little bit, yeah, depending on their personality. That makes sense. Yeah.
One question for that. The newcomers, the memorabilities that you're going to join in 8th grade.
Yes.
You mentioned it's very solidified groups. How do you guys integrate into those groups?
Yeah, so we do a lot of work with them specifically to help them transition in 8th grade and to help them make that transition probably more quickly than your sons had to. And we offer groups. I'll have lunch meetings with that particular group of transfer students frequently just to kind of get them up to speed. And I think we find too that many of those guys that are coming into the 8th grade will know some of the students here, through their towns and whatnot. So they'll have some connections, but we will, the advisors and myself will work with them pretty carefully in the fall to get them connected and up to speed. Yeah.
Sorry,
So you loop with them, you say, as they're.
Correct, yes. So I'll follow them into 8th grade and then I'll start again with the new 7th graders after that.
Is it the same amount of flex periods in 8th grade as there are in 7th grade? And if so, do they select an activity to do during flex period next year, or?
So it'll
I
be.
might not understand.
Yeah, no, so flex will be the same as 7th grade for the 8th graders, so they have to complete their PE and their music class one per semester in that flex, but that doesn't take every day of the cycle. So then they have 4 pre-flexes throughout the 7-day cycle, still in 8th grade. And we have many opportunities for them to kind of get involved in things during that period. But it is up to them to seek those out and to kind of, walk in that door and try something. So again, I think with that, with the fact that the 8th graders feel more comfortable here and know the teachers even that are running some of those activities, they're more apt to try some of those things during that flex period.
What point do they find out their
Yeah, sure.
End of August. So we'll do the class scheduling, academic scheduling, for get as much of it done as I can before I'm going on vacation sometime on July 10th or something like that. So I try to get all that stuff. And then Jen will come in, so try to make sure that a student has one of his teachers as his advisor. So Jen will come in sometime in August, and we'll start putting the advisory groups together. And so then everything gets uploaded, usually the week before Labor Day, sometime in there, to get everything uploaded. Something's changing. The kid who says he's going to jump to Alpha 1, and then comes and take a placement test and actually do anything, and then we got to move things around. So we really try not to do any of the advisory scheduling until we think the academic piece is almost set, as set as we can get it. So that's why it's later in the summer. I want to throw one thing out. I was just actually thinking, summer, as they get away from each other, one of the ways that they then will contact each other is through social media. And I never advocate social media, so make sure, I think it does terrible things. But it is a time when your monitoring of social media needs to step up in the summer, because they're not seeing each other in a personal way, and so things can get much worse more quickly on social media. The sort of what might be lighthearted teasing can easily move into something more severe, because they don't see the person face to face even the next day, which at least during the school year, things that maybe aren't great on social media, at least they can see the person the next day, and sometimes that can get resolved more easily. If they're all in different places and they're connecting only by social media, that can be much worse. So if your son is on social media, again, if he's not, keep him off as long as you possibly can. But if he is on social media, summertime is a time when you're going to have to monitor it more. And the other thing that happens is risky behaviors increase over the summer. They're not sort of in that routine, and sometimes they're hanging out in situations, and sometimes very good situations where they're with older kids. So sometimes they're exposed to some more things. The easiest risky behavior is saying something really stupid on social media, or doing something really stupid on social media. So it is a time when, it's hard to think, summer, why do I have to worry about these things? But it's actually a time when we have to worry about these things as parents. So just kind of keep an eye on that. Yes?
Do you have a session with them before the summer to inform them about this as well?
It's a good thought. We need to think about it. It's really the last couple of summers this is starting to come up, and that's why I'm thinking about it now. We haven't thought about it before the summers. It usually hits us in September. So, I'm sort of thinking aloud here as we go along, but we should do some stuff. We've got some sessions coming up as it is. Yeah.
Question, does the interface with the high schoolers change in 8th grade a little more to kind of, because that'll be the next change?
Yeah, not so much.
Not much. Same thing. They'll have junior mentors will be helping out in homerooms, and again, we probably have more 8th graders that want to have a tutor for math or something like that. So they have they might be working with an upperclassman once a week or once a cycle on tutoring, but not that much different. They'll probably be more comfortable hanging out in the cafeteria in the morning. You see the 8th graders are a little more comfortable with that, so they might interact a little that way.
What do you have?
Upperclassmen are, yeah, all in the cafeteria in the morning.
I was just curious, I know you did a half day for seventh graders, after the Students' Day. Is that something that you invite the eighth graders to help, or is that high school
Mostly that's the junior mentors who do the June and then the August orientation. We bring some 8th graders in to do some of the iPad demonstration stuff. But it's mostly the junior mentors. So a question like that?
Yeah, you mentioned there are some increased responsibilities for 8th grade. Can you say what any of those are?
Yeah, so I think in the classroom is what I was kind of thinking about. So I think teachers, a lot more independent work, so they're sort of responsible to manage their time more in that sense in a classroom. There's less chunking of long-term assignments by teachers, so it's more you're responsible to kind of pace yourself and figure out what steps you need to take. Maybe a little bit more like in-class conferencing with the teacher is available but not required. So I think, again, kind of going along more responsibility and also more advocating for themselves academically. Yeah.
So just a couple, somebody came in late, a couple things I tried to sell at the beginning. Spring-a-Palooza Friday night, it's a wonderful social opportunity for the boys. Pizza, ice cream sundaes, bubble soccer. And we invite girls to this one, a little different than the one we had in the fall that was just our own students. Grandparents' Day is coming up May 24th. It's really Grandparents' Afternoon. It's not a full day, it's an afternoon. It's we have a wonderful opening assembly, and then it's really an open house. They take their grandparents around. There's lots of things that they can do. For the students who don't have grandparents, we'll have them at the different points in the open house, and then everybody gets an ice cream sundae at the end of the day. So it's a nice time for them. May 31st will be the city project presentation, so we'll send something out on that. As we get closer, we'll be able to give a sort of 20-minute time slot when your son will be presenting. And then the last day of school is June 8th, and that's a half day, 11:15 dismissal on that last day. So, thank you all for coming here. Oh, yeah. When do they go back to shorts? They wear pants all through the summer. At some point in time, Mr. Brooks is the Vice Principal for Student Affairs. He gets the call. He decides when it happens. If it stays cool, we'll go all the way to June. If it looks like it's basically a matter of, particularly in the high school, there's buildings that aren't air conditioned. So when the temperature's going to be, sort of high 80s, 90s, it's going to be one day because the building doesn't heat up in one day. But if you start to see some consistent high temperatures, we'll switch over to shorts. Once we switch to shorts, their brains are on the summer. So, seriously, the later we can go, the better it is. The best academic years we have are when it rains all the way. When it's cold and rainy May. Cold, rainy May, they stay pretty focused. I've always said if we could end school 2 weeks before we publish that we end school, it would be the perfect situation. And we'd say, hey, school ends June 20th, and then on June 8th, we just say, hey, by the way, today's the last day. That would be ideal. And if I could keep it from the teachers, it'd be even better. But, I do think, so that's why, once you start clicking over certain things, you start to see some of those changes. So the nice thing about ending, we end early compared to the public schools. Really, they're pretty good throughout May. You get past Memorial Day weekend, and then all of a sudden, whoa, we get 2 exams and a couple projects to do and a presentation, and then we're done. Okay, so they're pretty good. The language exams will be the same day as Grandparents' Day. So they'll be in the morning, grandparents come in the afternoon, and the math exams will be the last week of school. Those are the only exams they take in summer. All right. We'll be around if you have questions. Thanks for coming in.